What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Vitamin Lead, your healthy dose of leadership. So excited to share with you today my interview with our special guest, Bill Coletti. Bill, thank you for being here on Vitamin Lead.
Hey, it is super exciting to join you. I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
I am too. So Bill, we already shared a little bit about your bio with our Vitamin Lead audience, but would you just take a second and share a little bit about yourself and the important work that you do?
Well, that's great. So we do crisis communications and reputation management. And the first half of my career, sort of as soon as I left high school, I'd been running political campaigns. So I ran political campaigns internationally, domestically, grew up in Florida. And so did that for a long time. And then around 2000 or so, made a transition to corporate communications, where we take the skill sets of politics and apply it into a corporate context. And then that morphed into specifically crisis communications and issues management. And then about 6 years ago, started our own firm, Kith, where there's 6 of us now, and we're doing it for a really nice basket of clients where we help folks that sit at the intersection of public expectation and their business strategy and try to help them navigate through critical moments and crises that they find themselves in.
That's awesome. I love the work that you all are doing at this juncture.
It is never ending. There's always something going on. Read the paper any day, and there's always something going on.
The media, I'm sure, you appreciate the media because they help you to be able to connect with people that need your services.
I do, and that's a great way to put it. Is appreciate is that they've got a job to do. I think we're in a place right now where everybody's sort of hating on the media and fake news and all that sort of shenanigans. But I get it that they're trying to do their job. We're trying to do our job, and we sort of, it's our role to tell stories. Not always through the media. We've got other outlets, but appreciate is the right word. Not dislike or frustrate or scorn. It's I get the role that they play.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a little bit about your early career, growing up there in Florida and stuff. A lot of our listeners are kind of early in their career. Is there something that you would say was a lesson you learned early in your career that really helped you throughout your career from one of those experiences you had early on?
Yeah. So I'll do a generic and then a specific. I just think be curious, be interested in different things, be interested in adjacent industries, be interested in lots and lots of different topics. And so when you're in politics or policy or sort of any sort of government services that, early on, you are sort of forced to have a pretty wide aperture of things you look at, things you pay attention to. I think it's really sort of the value of a liberal arts degree is that it really sort of widens your aperture of the way you look and think about things. So I think stay curious about different things that are going on. Form opinions and be prepared to defend those opinions. But, I've always given that guidance. And then the concrete one is travel internationally. I just think a perspective of international travel is so critical. And in fact, it's almost a defining aspect of people that I hire. If you haven't traveled internationally, I probably am not going to hire you because I think that is it's a key differentiator. And it shows curiosity, B, it shows courage. And then it also puts you outside of your comfort zone. So I think those are really important things.
That's really good. Is that, so one of the things I saw in your bio was that you worked in Bulgaria. Is that part of how you got connected to that?
Absolutely. I vividly remember as an undergrad saying, which now sounds so ridiculous, is that I'm much more interested in domestic policy. International affairs is not really interesting to me. And so then I got this opportunity to live and work in Bulgaria and do some work in a couple of other Eastern European countries while living over there. And I love it. It was transformational for me. Exactly what I just said. I took my own medicine. It made me curious. It gave me courage and just sort of widened my worldview. And took me outside of my comfort zone. So absolutely, I took my own medicine on that.
That's awesome. One bit of curiosity for me was I was looking, as I did some of my research, I saw that you're a certified wrong thinker. What is that? Why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is?
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's great. So it's this methodology that came out of the Stanford Design School, and it is a methodology of facilitating and strategic planning that really forces people not to think about things in a linear path. Is that it's pretty easy to do strategic planning, which is 5 degrees better than what you did last year. But it encourages people to think wrong about what does a bold path look like. If this is easy, what is this, and what is that bold path? And so you're really, it's a facilitation tool more at its fundamental, at its core. Is it really encouraging people to get outside the box, be bold, be creative, think about things that they've never thought of, and do it in a very team collaborative way. So it's a wrong thinking mentality, because most people go into strategic planning, particularly in a corporate context, and I'm sure you've experienced this in your own strategic planning. Everybody goes in with a little bit of caution and an absence of courage. Wrong thinking encourages you to throw both caution to the wind and be a little bit more bold.
Do you think we do that because we want to salvage the resources we have and be protective of it, or are we afraid of failure?
I think we're afraid of failure. I think we're afraid of failure. We're afraid of saying something stupid. And I think that, the adage, as dated as it is, nobody gets fired for buying IBM. And so if you just do make incremental change, I think there's a reward for that. Now I say that, and then there's this new thesis that I have, is that doesn't mean everybody should be Facebook and everybody should be disruptive. And the adage of Facebook is move fast and break things. And so I'm not advocating for that either. I'm advocating there's a lot of real estate between move fast and break things and, incremental buy IBM. And so that's the space that I think is really very powerful. It's much more about transformation than it is about disruption.
So how can a leader maybe lead their team? Let's say I'm leading a team of managers in my organization. How can I help them are there some specific tools that I can use to take them on a bold path there?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So I believe that one of the things that the wrong thinking does is that it's very much a kinetic experience, meaning you're getting up and on a table. And so I think it's one of the simplest exercises, and the one I really, really like with the think wrong exercise, is you actually just create with blue construction tape on a wall, an XY axis on a wall, and then you put another one at 45 degrees, and you just have your team write what are some bold activities. Pick a particular topic, an enterprise or a project that you want to do. What are bold tasks? And they go above the 45-degree line. And then what are sort of cautious and conservative and status quo tasks? And just write those there. Force the team to think above and below that line. And then it will be very, very obvious of the things that people get excited about. And they're always on that bold process. So I think it's a very simple process. XY axis, 45 degrees. Post-it notes on bold and post-it notes on the expected path. And it really galvanizes teams. And it's kinetic. It gets people moving and thinking, which I think is really valuable, not just sitting around, chatting. It really is more valuable to get people moving.
Yeah, that's kind of the thesis. I'm going to switch a little bit. Like with your book, Critical Moments, you talk a lot about how it's not just a binder to put on the bookshelf, but it's something that you actually are simulating and doing different things about. I loved in chapter 1 of the book, you put that Seth Godin quote that just says, "Reputation is what people expect us to do next." Can you share a little bit about organizational reputation and why that's so important?
Yeah, so it's kind of what I want the next phase of my career to be. Is we've spent a lot of time, I spent the last part of my 13 years of my career doing crisis response, where companies find themselves in crisis, need a seasoned expert to come in to offer perspective and wisdom. And that's what we've done. And we've been very successful, and I've loved the work that we've done for some really great corporations. I think now we really want to be in a position of reputation resilience. How can we create organizations that are more resilient, that are more ready when a crisis comes, and are more aware about risks? And so what the 4 A's, what I wrote about in the book, the 4 A's of reputation management, is that, Seth Godin said it really, really well, is that, your reputation is what people expect of what you say, do, or produce that's there. I use the coinage of it's the company owns its brand, but the public owns its reputation. And so if you have this belief that reputation is about expectation, and that the public is the ultimate judge of that, we need, as corporations, need to create programs and tactics that are absolutely meeting the public's expectation of what we should do as a company. And you can't do that unless you go on this journey that I talked about, the 4 A's of reputation management.
It's good. Yeah. So will you share the 4 A's just so that
yeah,
can know
happy to talk about it. So the 4 A's, and it's the imagery on the cover of the book. It sort of begins with this process of assessment. Of awareness. Begins with this process of awareness. How can we be self-aware as an organization? What can we really do? What do we really stand for? And what is the marketplace of ideas around us? What's that all about? And so that's just a lot of sort of clarity and reflection about self, meaning the corporation, clarity and reflection about what do we stand for as an organization. The next is assessment, which is where once you understand where you stand, go ask your employees, go ask your stakeholders. It's public opinion research, basically. Going ask your customers and the people that care about you, what do you expect of us? What do you want us to do? So we're all familiar with Starbucks, obviously. Starbucks has had a couple of bumps recently related to race relations. They've had some store managers and have had some few challenges related to race. There's another company called Illinois Tool and Die. I have an expectation, and Illinois Toolworks, very large publicly traded company. I have an expectation that Starbucks needs to be on top of race relations, that Starbucks has a public brand and a public perception, and those are issues that are really, really important to them. Illinois Toolworks, I don't have that expectation. I just want to make a really good product that lets me fix my whatever problem I might have if I was in a manufacturing industry. The way people get there is through this process of assessment, of where they actually sort of ask this public, ask stakeholders, what do you expect of us? What do you want us to do? And so that's the second layer that's there. Third A is this notion of authority. And authority is about getting executive buy-in, making sure that once we are we understand who we are and we're aware, we've asked the public what they think, we then move to this process of, can we really pull this off as an organization? Not just getting budget to run a program or a tactic, but really is this true to the DNA and to the core beliefs of the leadership? Because reputation is very much founded on leaders, very much the individuals that make up the leadership of an organization. That's where the reputation is really sort of born and nurtured, that's there. So authority is the third step. On the diagram, you'll see there's a solid blue line between the third step and the fourth step, between authority and action. And that's the barrier between well-intentioned staff or consultants that come in with great ideas. So you cannot jump to action, I believe, unless you've gone through these bottom 3 steps. Because the way that works out is that if we say we want to grow our reputation, if you jump to action, you will follow the lead of other folks, or you'll just write a bigger check to the United Way, or you'll write a big check to the Boys and Girls Club. And you have no idea of whether that's true to who you are, what the public expects of you, and if that's what your leadership wants. And so there's that solid blue line that says, don't jump to action unless you've gone through this journey first. And then you get to action. That's where you get into some really cool and exciting programs around leadership marketing, where you can be innovative. Walmart, for example, is doing amazing stuff with solar energy. And not a lot of people would expect that from Walmart, but it is what people want from them. A lot of stakeholders that care about them. Starbucks doing amazing things for their employees. Patagonia, fabulous company. They're doing a lot of terrific things. They get there to action that matters by being sort of aware, assessing, and getting authority from their leadership in order to do it.
That's good. I know that I'm grateful for the actions of Starbucks. We lived on their health insurance early on in our marriage, my wife and I, thanks to her working there. And so I'm so grateful for the benefits they gave to part-time employees at that time. So
it's great. And they take positions on things, sometimes controversial, but I've got a pretty clear, as do you, a pretty clear understanding of what I expect Starbucks to do. And they get the benefit of the doubt. And so if I were to say Starbucks and say Walmart, and you just immediately, have some sort of cognitive recognition of, well, Starbucks, well, that's not the company I know. They'll kind of get it right. Walmart, you kind of think, yeah, they probably are selling a bunch of garbage and taking advantage of their employees. And they're both perception based. And I don't know if Starbucks always gets it right. And I know that Walmart's not always taking advantage of people. And so that changing of reputation is difficult over time, but doable.
So we live in kind of a polarized world, right? And
Yeah.
so as your company, how do you know which of the public perceptions is the right one to focus on as a company? Do they often, when they do some of these like public questions, do they find kind of polarizing opinions about the company?
Oh, absolutely. They absolutely find polarizing opinions. I think for me, it starts with this awareness. So take the issues of LGBTQ. Okay. Don't know where you are, don't know where anybody is on that topic. And people can be all over the place on that topic. Is that there are some companies, because they are self-aware, not because of their stakeholders, but because of what they believe, maybe for recruitment reasons or moral or ethical reasons, have a position. Chick-fil-A on one side, other companies on another side that's there. That's what they believe. And it's certainly polarizing. People believe very strongly on that issue one way or the other that's there. But it starts with, what do we believe as a company? Then you go ask people about that opinion, as opposed to going as a blank slate and telling the company just simply reflecting society. And that is rarely a good position for companies to be in. I would much rather be Chick-fil-A and really true to their convictions and move forward, as opposed to, well, what do you want us to think? And that's when people get in a lot of trouble, because it breaks down at authority, because the leadership team is truly not bought into that.
So does that change over time? Is it possible that the ethos of the company can change, but the leader hasn't changed? Is that often when we see like a leadership transition in a company, or what does that look like?
I think it absolutely can change. I think there are societal changes. I think if we were having this company in the 1950s in the Deep South, I think there would be conversations about race, and there would be people that would be on the wrong side of history about race. So absolutely, society changes. And I think leaders, they do reflect that, they understand it, but I hope it's more directly related to their core philosophies on that. And so now we look back at some of leadership decisions of the 50s and 60s related to race, and we all scratch our heads now and say, oh my gosh, how did you do that? And so I think, yes, it changes. I also think the public's expectation changes of what people expect organizations to do. I think people the public has greater expectations of what they think companies should deliver and should do. And I don't think every company has to rise to that occasion. But I think they need to understand that the public is looking at more from corporations than they have previously.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So let's say an organization's in a crisis. Could you maybe talk us through, like you've been behind those closed doors with these companies. What does the first 24 hours of an organization in crisis look like? What are leaders doing? When do they usually call your company?
Yep. Yeah.
Could you talk us through that?
Happy to. So, it's a lot of different, not any individual, not any company are identical. Very often one situation is ostrich, head in the sand. Oh my gosh, this, I don't want this to happen. And if I just hide, it'll go away. That's a very plausible solution. And it's typically outside counsel or a board member or someone like that says, man, this isn't going away. We got to deal with this issue that's there. In that regard, there's a lot of denial, and companies don't really want to acknowledge the challenge that they have in front of them. I think there's also companies that are very, very proactive, and anytime they kind of get pricked or poked, is that they kind of overreact to a certain extent. And not everything deserves a response, different than the ostrich scenario. But typically what I find when I walk into corporations is that there is a mixed bag of people. There are some people of like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing ever. And I don't ever want to I don't know what to do next. There are other leaders that really show up. And when they show up, you really see something special. And I love the adage that says the crucible of crisis, doesn't define your leadership, it reveals it. And so I think leaders that have taken the time to think about the what if this could happen, they really those leaders, it really sort of reveals what they stand for and reveals what's there. And the best example of that is BP. Tony Hayward was the CEO of BP when they had the tragedy in the Gulf of Mexico with the Deepwater Horizon rig, is that it revealed his leadership where he would say, I would much rather be sailing on the Thames River in England than here dealing with this. And so that reveals his leadership. So, I think inside the room, people are scared and confused. It's my role to give clear judgment and the ability to look around corners and tell people, if we do this, here's what we can expect. If we don't do this, here's what we can expect. And sort of to be able to look into the future based on pattern recognition and an understanding of what happens in the public is what we do. But it's a wide range of leaders, just like your example. Every leader is different. But what I do know is that quote is that the crucible of crisis, there's not a lot of on-the-job training. It kind of reveals, in true crises, it kind of reveals who you are.
Is it often that it's a lot different than their personality, or it really is just their personality? Yeah.
It's their person. I think fundamentally it's their personality. And I think how leaders show up in a crisis, is the core raw self that's there. And so and not all crises are created equal in that regard. Some are big, some are small. But I do think that it can be trained. It's just like any muscle that can be trained, is that I think that you want to train it with crisis simulations. And I think one of the best advice I give clients, and you and your team can do this, is just read the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, your local paper, and say, what if this had happened to us? How would we react? What if this had happened to us? That's exercising that. And I think that's critical for leaders. And so that when those skill sets get revealed, they like what they see. And so that's a very simple but very, very powerful way to just simply ask, what if?
So is crisis simulation, is that basically just kind of like football practice? You're just out there running the reps, trying to figure out what you would do in those circumstances, or is there more to it that you
probably more like a scrimmage, is that we actually got an offense and a defense and people are hitting each other and we're wearing full pads. But yeah, we try to create simulation environments for our clients where they can actually we've got a software system and a product that we use that really creates a walled garden where people can actually safely exchange on email, exchange on social media. We've created a thing called Friendbook, and we've created a thing called Tweeter. And so it's this real ecosystem of reality where people can actually engage. We've got live reporters calling in that are role players. So yeah, we try to simulate the game as much as we can and put pressure, not just set your hair on fire, but put pressure on organizations to kind of reveal the gaps. And one of the biggest gaps we see is the lack of coordination between marketing, communications, and operations. The operators, the people that are doing the business, are disconnected from the folks that are actually talking about it. And that's one of the biggest gaps that we see in these crisis simulations.
So your job is to get them to communicate and get used to working with one another in those times.
I think in the simulation, it's really to identify the gap. And then once we try to solve the gaps, yes, that's exactly where we spend our time. But I think I'm really satisfied when we have clients that just illuminate the gap. That's sort of one of the best things that we can do. And then we'll figure out solutions to it. But identifying those challenges is a big first step.
Now, are some of the principles of reputation management, is it something that individuals apply to their life? Like I'm thinking like maybe some celebrities that have been in hot water, but maybe more close to home, people like you and like me, like if your reputation has been sullied or you've had issues with family members or something like that, Are there some basic principles that we can use to restore reputation or manage reputation?
Yeah, so it's actually one of my 2020 intellectual journeys that I want to go on next year is because someone else asked me that question, is the application of the 4 A's for personal development. And I really think it works. And so I've used it in the process, and I'll come back and answer your question in just a second. But it comes back directly related to diet and exercise, or I want to run a marathon, or any sort of goal that you have. If you're not aware of what you can do, and you haven't really gotten some sort of an assessment of what are the tools that I can actually use to try to get this done, and are my doctor, can actually pull it off. I had a friend who was a Marine in Bulgaria, and he said, yeah, I'm going to go run a marathon. And I was training diligently, and I knew what I needed to do, and I was diligently adding miles to get ready for the marathon. He just said, I'm a Marine, I can go run a marathon. Now, needless to say, I succeeded and he failed, because you can't just jump to action. So absolutely, I think you can go on a reputation journey and think about that. I think for celebrities and you and me and things like that, I think the best thing to do is just simply be a good person. Just think about the consequences of our actions. I think we've worked for some high net worth individuals, and they're not bad people. They just didn't really fully think through the opportunities that they were afforded, and the way that it would look. And so Warren Buffett is such a sage, but he said, his reputation management or principles are really easy. And he took over Solomon Brothers, investment bank, some time ago. He said, just do what you do. And if you would see it in the front page of the New York Times, how would you explain it to your mom or your family or your sister? And if you see something bad, and that's just a really good way to think about things. There are things that we know are right and wrong, because we don't get to where we are in our lives without having some semblance of success adjudicating right and wrong. Is that I think leaders need to be really conscious about that and just simply do the right thing. Now, there are moral challenges. There are ethical dilemmas where it's a fine, the width of a hair, the difference between right and wrong. But I think generally it's pretty straightforward on what leaders and individuals can do.
One of the parts of your book you talk about with reputation management, there's like 7 levers that people can pull with reputation. I guess my question there is, we don't have to go into all 7 of them,
Sure.
But are there levers that some people pull too much? And are there levers that maybe some companies don't pull enough that would help them with the reputation management?
Terrific question. So there are these 7 levers, and there's a lot of scholarship around that. Some people suggest there's 18. Some people suggest there's 8. I've just come down, and I just think based on my experience, it's these 7. And basically what they are, these are the 7 things that a company can do. And I equate them to throttles of a light switch or a boat or something like that, as you can add more gas or less gas. Is that I think people over-index on sustainability, because we're all talking about it. It's super cool. We've all got our own opinions, and the science is pretty clear on climate change. So I think a lot of people are just over-indexing on that. So I see that a lot about sustainability and CSR, social responsibility. So that's one I see people over-indexing on. The one I see them under-indexing on is employee endorsement. Is really caring and being concerned about your team, because what your team says about you publicly, they are your best or worst ambassadors in the marketplace. So if the folks that show up, 40 hours a week and are working in your enterprise, whatever it is, what they say or think about you as a leader and you as an organization, that's something you should really, really pay attention to. So that's kind of in the extreme. And then sort of in the middle, that's kind of a toss-up, is this notion of leadership privilege. Is that I think we mentioned earlier, so many reputations are made or broken based on the perception of the leader. So think of a great company, and it's not hard to think about the CEO, with Starbucks, Walmart, GE. You can think of a lot of great companies, but you really think about the leader that's there. So those are the two extremes. I think employee endorsement gets under attention. I think environmental sustainability issues get over attention. And I think somewhere in the middle is this notion of leadership, that leadership is a privilege, and organizations should really promote their leadership and their executive voice.
I guess that would, one of the things I wanted to ask about later was this whole crisis with WeWork, with their public funding and all that happened there, some of the maybe overuse of executive privilege, as well as
absolutely
4,000 people losing their jobs just this last week. Like that's quite a crazy amount of thing that they're dealing with right now.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that, or what you would do if you were working with WeWork right now?
Yeah, it became a cult of personality. That very, very much was singularly about that leader and what the leader could and couldn't do. And he lost sight. I think that the WeWork, so I've been a WeWork tenant 2, maybe 3 times in different iterations of, we needed some temporary space, but also put my firm there early on. Amazing concept. It works for companies that need that type of space that's there. So an amazing concept. I think what the leader did is he got way out in front of his ski tips, and I didn't need them to do all of the things that they were doing. I think there was some bad financing that was there. I think the way they should have gotten rid of him earlier. It took a long time to negotiate that exit strategy that was there, and they needed to get the rescue package from SoftBank. And so I think working with them now, I think they're doing a lot of the right things. They had to right size the finances in order to do that. If I was them, I would get out of the news and I would focus on the companies like me that were there, really focus on us, meet our very, very specific needs, and kind of reboot, and then sort of begin growing again from there. But the biggest thing they needed to do, much like Uber needed to do with their CEO, is you have to make a very, very stark departure from the old to the new. Papa John's has done it. There's a lot of companies that have done it, and it is absolutely the right thing to do. So if I was working for them, I would say, really make it clear what you're going to do different, how you're going to do it differently, and really focus on their customer base, which are small businesses looking for nice short-term office space. Really focus on those folks at a core business level, and no hanky-panky where they're buying buildings and renting them back and things like that. I just really try to run a clean operation.
You had mentioned something about if you don't simulate crisis, you're going to spend a lot of your time and energy on that and not on the right things, like you're saying, of focusing on the people that could actually be your customers.
Absolutely. Companies just, it's that ostrich that we talked about earlier. Too many companies say they don't listen and look at the signals of the marketplace. You look at the Wall Street Journal any day, and if you ask yourself, what if? Pretty clearly reminds you that this could happen to us, and what are we going to do about it? So yeah, companies I would rather spend 5 minutes at a weekly staff meeting thinking about what if than the millions of dollars and millions of calories that are spent managing a crisis in real time.
Good. Bill, one more question here for you.
Sure.
You said at the end of the book, you said authentically developed reputation improves resiliency and the ability to thrive over the long term. I think everybody listening wants that for themselves, their organization.
Yeah.
What parting advice would you give to our listeners to take that first step toward authentic reputation in their organization today?
Yeah, awesome. Really a beautiful, beautiful thought to end on. And so I think it goes back to the 4 A's. Be true to yourself. What do you stand for? What do you believe in? And then just live that out. Live that as a leader, and be caring. Learn, be curious, the things we started at the very top of an organization, or start of the conversation. But I think for organizations is that they really need to be conscious of who they are, what they stand for, and what do people really expect from them. I see a lot of companies getting themselves into trouble when they bite off more than they can chew, when they try to be too many things to too many people. Is that I think it is okay to be focused and disciplined, and really do that. So I think that I really believe that people should be infinitely curious and relatively focused on what they execute on, and really, really be good at that. And your reputation will, to a certain extent, for an individual, kind of take care of itself if you do that. Have awareness, but really sort of focus on things that matter to you, to your family, in your faith walk, whatever that journey is. Really sort of focus on those things that matter, as opposed to trying to be all things to all people.
That's awesome. Thank you for that, Bill. And thank you for all that you've shared with us today. Your book is Critical Moments. They can go to criticalmomentsbook.com for resources and to order your book.
Yep.
And
also Amazon and all the other usual places that books hang out.
And where else? Is there anything else whether you'd like them to find you? Obviously, Kith, KITH.co.
KITH.co is the name of our firm. Pretty active on Twitter and also on LinkedIn. And it's B Coletti on Twitter, BCOLETTI. And then the website's the easiest place to find us. We archive a lot of our content and website. I try to write an article at least once a week talking about reputation and crisis in some form.
Well, Bill, I'm grateful for your time. Thank you for joining us on Vitamin Lead. And I hope that you have a great holiday season.
Well, it's absolutely my pleasure. Thanks for taking the time. I too wish you a great holiday season, and something we've all got lots of things to be thankful for as we head into the end of the year and excited for next year.
Absolutely. Have a great day, Bill. We will talk to you real soon.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye-bye.